Welcome to the final chapter of your human and cultural geography textbook. This is economic geography. So really the foundation of this chapter is dealing with the fact that there are economies within California and around the world, and there's a lot of different attributes that can affect that. The big one is looking at the different sectors of the economic trade, whether it be trade, industry, export, import, looking at both the primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors of economics. Looking more in particularly in California, think about some of the industries and economics that we have here. We have mining. We have one of the largest open pit mines in North America out in the Mojave. We have floriculture. We have agriculture. We have milk sheds. And also think about just the new CBD oil and the legalization of marijuana, how that is going to be introduced into a new form of economics for California. Manufacturing, that's an interesting piece of California's history. Going back a few chapters, we discuss how California, there's options to divide California into 6 smaller states. Manufacturing has a lot to do with that because the carbon footprint standards are set so high that many manufacturing companies are no longer able to produce efficiently in California, and they then have to export their manufacturing to other countries or states. So those are some of the attributes there. Then as you move forward with this text, you'll learn more about Weber's location model. And Weber's location model is really a simple model. It just means that the closer that you have the manufacture of a product to where it needs to be delivered, the more cost effective and faster your production will be. That's important, especially when looking at items such as steel, because of how heavy it is. So the heavier it is, the more it's going to cost to transport it such great distances. You'll move into farther understanding of capital audio manufacturing. You'll learn more about the Rust Belt. You'll also learn more about different types of wealth gaps. And something that's really unique to geography within this economic sector is tourism. Ecotourism is huge, and you may not think of it as being a large market in the geographic field, but ecotourism is massive. What is ecotourism? Well, visiting national parks, going to Mountain High, going to Mammoth Mountain, Big Bear, traveling to these locations to take advantage of nature. That's ecotourism. These small towns thrive on it because most of these communities, there would be no reason for them to be able to be self-sufficient without tourism alone. So when you have a city that undergoes a situation, so we'll use the example of Las Vegas when they had the shooting incident in Las Vegas. The ecotourism, it was that as a city they were very concerned about the repercussions of that because they knew that there'd be a decline in visitors. And or maybe think of another example would be Disneyland. A couple of years ago, Disneyland had a measles incident, and so were concerned about the input of people, of guests coming and visiting. And so these are really big pieces of that ecotourism piece. Moving forward, we move into different also site locations. Site location and retail location is actually quite interesting, and it's very geographic. We're able to plot demand and plot location attributes, being that maybe you're out driving around and you wonder why that there's a Starbucks on one side and maybe another coffee house across from it. Well, there's been a lot of math involved in looking at the locations, practicality of them visiting these locations and the demand. The same thing as having like a Taco Bell and a Del Taco. It's not willy-nilly placed. There are actual structures and design as to how retail site location works. Which I think is a really important piece to understand, especially when looking at the different types of struggles that brick and mortar businesses have. Brick and mortar means like your malls, where everyone's moving to an online shopping experience, right? But how does that change the economy of the bigger picture? Because you have to remember that a brick and mortar store has lots of individuals in that store that work. You also have all the employment of the distribution center, the transportation costs. So there's a lot of overhead costs on there and a lot of people involved. So if you close up all your face-to-face stores and you solely work on online, you have a much smaller workforce, which really overall it does help the consumer, but it actually hurts the overall economics, as you'll learn more about that in particular. Another thing that I think is interesting that this book brings in is the idea of the hamburger stand. You have to remember that California is the originator of fast food. If you think about the uh, fast food that was introduced to the world from California alone. You've got McDonald's, you've got Carl's Jr., you're going to have Del Taco, Taco Bell, Bob's Big Boy. You can sit down and start looking at other places and the foods that were introduced out of California. These chain-based companies are now around the world. And what's interesting about that is by using your senses, you don't even need the name McDonald's on the building anymore. You already understand the architecture design. But if you take yourself back and Google some of the older photos of how these buildings were designed, like Taco Bell's, they originally were little mission buildings with a little mission bell at the top. Um, there were different architectural designs that kind of helped strive and push their packaging along the way. But as things have changed, we start to change the model. So I think the best example that I can give you, because many of you guys are in that age group, is look at how McDonald's have changed. McDonald's, when you first probably started going to them, they had the red roofs and a play area on the inside. Now they're moving to more towards a very square box, no play area, almost like an Apple Store type design. That's very unique. But how does that change their overall cost? Does the shape and design of the building change the way that the economics work for the company? And there's been lots of studies, and they're finding there could be a correlation with not just location, but also design. So anyway, this is the last chapter of our text. I hope that you enjoyed it. I think it's a very different perspective. Again, I like how the fact that this book takes everything around the world, all the different cultures, and bring it together, because really Los Angeles is a melting pot, and California as well, in the bigger sense of so many diverse cultural landscapes and people and places, ethnic backgrounds, cultural diversity, all these different pieces. And then we start here at the hub of your city, and then compare it globally around the world. I think it makes it more fun to study that way. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed. I know that I certainly did, and we'll talk soon.